Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. You guys may have been seeing all the deck profiles and discussion that I've been posting in regards to the Tournament of Power. Huge shout out to my team, Shenron's Lair and Dalen Mac, for throwing such an amazing event. The weekend was incredible, guys. Between the regional on Friday and the Tournament of Power Saturday and Sunday, man, I had an absolute blast. I got to work a little bit behind the scenes as well as far as throwing a tournament was concerned. Man, it was so much fun. It was so cool meeting all you people out there, meeting all the fans of the channel, meeting all the Dragon Ball Super players. It was such a good time. So in this video, I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of insight as to my tournament experience as a player. So I did play two different decks, one on Friday, one on Saturday. I'm going to explain all the rationale as to why I chose different decks. There is actually good reasoning I think you guys can pick up a little bit from. So in terms of competitive play, I think this is going to be a good video for you guys. So if you guys are new out there, make sure to subscribe. And guys, if you want to help out the channel, one of the #1 ways you can do that, you can use my TCG player link in the description if you want to buy any of the cards I talk about or show in today's video. So guys, let's get off into this discussion. So firstly, on Friday, I played Cooler, Red Blue Cooler. Now, interestingly enough, no cooler topped, whether it was Friday, Saturday, or at the TOP event or the regional. So no coolers topped, but I actually regret not playing cooler at the Tournament of Power. So let me get back into my explanation. So I played cooler on Friday. Now, the reason for that, there were a few reasons. Number one, the saying goes that at the beginning of a new format, people are going to play aggro until control and mid-range can kind of find their place in the format. So that's a general rule of thumb to go by, and I thought it really rang true in terms of this coming weekend because we knew of two very powerful aggro decks. We had Mono Black Buu and we had Reboot Gohan. Both these decks coming fresh out of set 9, super powerful aggro decks, and that proved to be true throughout the entire weekend. Several Gohans topped, several Black Buus topped. I believe the Friday regional there was a finals between Buu and Gohan. I believe I heard that. And those two decks were super strong aggro decks. So I picked Cooler going into Friday because it was a strong mid-range defensive deck that I thought could play well against aggro. I have actually tested Cooler a lot, and in this video I'm going to show you guys my Cooler deck profile that I played on Friday. So playing Cooler a lot, it really didn't have bad matchups against anything. Everything was at least playable, and if you guys have been fans of the channel for any amount of time, all the decks I've had really good success with, they can play against everything. And the only really bad matchup I've experienced with Cooler is Universe 7 Surge Goku. But one really bad matchup against the rest of the board in a really diverse format, I'll take it. Now, I made a deck decision change from Friday to Saturday. I actually went X01 on Friday, no losses, went X01 on Friday, but I had to drop from the Friday tournament to go help my friends and my teammates set up for the Tournament of Power. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure I would have topped. But anyways, going into Saturday, I decided to play Cell. Now, I know you guys might be thinking, don't look at me crazy. I knew about the Cell loop a few days before the tournament. I did learn about it, but I didn't think it was the right play for Friday, again, because of aggro. Cell really can't beat aggro. And if you guys want my opinion on that Cell loop, I do hope Bandai erratas it or fixes it because it is kind of stupid, but it's really not all that strong. You guys should actually check out Eggman's video that he did talking about the loop and explaining the loop. I think he summed it up pretty well, but it's really not all that strong. There's only certain matchups where it absolutely wins you the game, but in those matchups, you're already favorite anyway. But anyways, the reason I picked Cell going into that event, going into Tournament of Power, was not because of the crazy loop. The reason I picked Cell going into that event was because on Friday, we got the numbers for the overall representation in the room. The two most highly represented decks were 1 Piccolo Surge and 2 Universe 7. So aggro was represented. I think Gohan and Buu were somewhere off in the 4s and 5s in terms of representation. But if the two most popular decks by a large margin were going to be U7 and Piccolo, I didn't really want to play Cooler into a field of that. I actually thought that Cell would be a much stronger pick into that field. Unfortunately, at TOP, I got faced against 2 Gohans, got absolutely destroyed. That matchup, again, is very difficult. But anyways, it was a bad decision on my part because, again, aggro was still pretty popular, even though it wasn't the most popular deck, and I usually do very well with decks that kind of have a good shot against the rest of the field. So that was a mistake on my part. I do wish I played Cooler. Now I'm going to show you guys the Cooler list that I did play on Friday that took me to an X01 record. Again, no losses. So the Cooler leader, pretty insane in general. I mean, he does a ton of different things on both the Awakened and Unawakened side. The main difference is on your Unawakened side, he will mill your opponent on both sides, but he will only draw cards from negging on the Unawakened side. But then on the Awakened side, he draws on both sides when you neg a battle card. This is really important and I think you need to be playing Self-Awaken in this format. You're going to see in the main deck, I'm not playing any Self-Awaken. I know in other videos I've said I only play Self-Awaken in decks that don't have any inherent Self-Awaken, and that was another thing I really wish I did. And probably if I played this deck at Tournament Power, I would have included some Self-Awaken in the main deck. I didn't really play this as a mill strategy. This was basically just a mid-range defensive deck. I really didn't think mill was the main strategy, because milling your opponent requires them to put cards onto the field, and not all matchups are doing that. So really, this was a mid-range deck that put pressure on decks that happen to just draw a ton of cards. That was basically how I treated this. So real quick, we'll go through the deck profile. 4 super combos, you're gonna play them. The Beerus one was the perfect one for this deck. We had 4 check lands, and we also, I mean, that's just the self-explanatory stuff. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. Then we had the heart and soul of the deck, 4 Cooler Tyrannical Assault. The fact that you can loop this guy, and I will explain that play later, you can basically recycle this card and use it over and over and over again in this deck, which is one of the main appeals to the deck. It allows you to be very, very aggressive. It allows you to be very, very defensive, and it also allows you to mill your opponent out in the situations where that is necessary. I'll explain that loop a little bit later. Next up, we had 4 full power Frieza 100% overdrive. And the one thing I love about this deck, man, it just looks absolutely beautiful. I have to say that. But anyways, this is the boss monster of the deck. Normally, I would not say you need to play 4 of a card like this, like a card that you really only want to see late game. But we're only playing 12 multicolors, not counting our super combos, which we generally don't want to charge. So for that reason, I decided to max out on the 100% overdrive. But I mean, even in certain matchups, like even against blue-green, if they don't have the energy for Ultra Instinct Son Goku, you can literally just hard cast this, and there's not much your opponent can do. So really, this card does struggle against yellow, but there's certain ways you can play around that, which we will explain later. So red cards, 2 Denial of Hope. Man, any instance I get to play this card in a deck with this art, I will play it. But realistically, it's one of the most powerful cards in red. You're gonna play it at 2. It just makes really perfect sense. Answering Topos, answering Vegeta the Cruels. This thing answers counterplays more than it answers actual regular 4 drops and 3 drops. So just keeping that in mind is really important. And Piccolo Assimilated Ability was not very popular at either tournament. So this card wasn't super essential for that, but it's still good to have in the main deck because your deck can struggle against Piccolo Assimilated Ability in certain instances. Next up, Mach Speed Kaioken Son Goku. This card really overperformed over the entire weekend. I mean, this counterplay is just perfect with this leader. You counterplay it, you neg 10 something, neg 5 another thing, you make your opponent mill, and you draw a card. So it's basically Chomp the Trickster in the sense of this deck. But I mean, this card again really overperformed. If you guys are looking for a way to answer the Cell loop with the Android 17 and the 3-drop Cell Android Absorber, Cooler can do it pretty well because you can counterplay with this card if you have the 2 energy available. You -5 the 17, you -10 the Cell. You basically just, you still discard a card, but you draw back off your leader, and then you answer the problem of that loop right then and there. Next up, 4 Frieza Death's Embrace. This really is one of the best cards in this deck. It's one of the most consistent ways to get leader draws off your awakened, unawakened side. If you play this on your turn and then pass to your opponent, if you have that energy up, even if you're not going to kill something, even if you're not going to need the -10, just using the -10 to get that draw on your unawakened side can be really, really important. Timing that well is really, really good. Otherwise, this is amazing for pushing for game. Like if you have 4 random energy, using this to give your opponent's leader -40k, they really can't do much about that. This is really one of the best cards in the deck. A card you'll have to consider in red decks going forward in general. Red is probably one of the most expensive colors to play in this game, but man, these cards are super strong. Next up, 4 Frieza No Introduction. So this was our way to go into full power overdrive. I'm not playing a Frieza swap lineup in this deck. I just don't think it's consistent enough. Without a card like Successor of Hope, this deck can't really run Frieza swap efficiently, in my opinion. So we are playing for the Frieza No Introductions, and I have a lot of negates in this deck, so having this and the other negates we'll talk about really helped in the Gohan matchup. One of the rounds I ended up negating my Gohan opponent, I believe I counted 14 times, and then finally winning the game. So that was pretty wild. Then we're playing 2 Son Gohan the Avengers. So we're not playing Topo Righteous 8 in this deck. Topo was another card that was not very popular over the course of the weekend, and for good reason. It's just not great against the Gohan aggro decks out there because they have a really easy answer to it in the form of Focus Breakthrough. So for that reason, I went with Son Gohan the Avenger because I'd rather draw off my negates in this deck than discard off my negates. I was considering siding Topo for those super aggressive matchups, but you just don't really need it because the neg of this deck, the ability to decrease power, really helps out with Boo. And then for the Gohan matchup, again, you just have a ton of negates so you don't really need the topo. In my testing, topo wasn't really necessary, so that's a good budget answer for you guys out there that want to play this deck that don't want to invest in topos. But then again, we come across another really expensive card, Super Saiyan Vegeta Exploding Weakness. Now, you don't really need this card to play the deck. I will say that it's not an absolute essential staple. It is great in the deck because it procs your leader draw and it answers really wide boards. Just saying though, if you decide not to play this card in your deck, don't make that information aware to your opponent because they will take full advantage of that. You need to sometimes keep 3 energy open just to make your opponent think you have this Vegeta. And in that case, they will not commit too much to the board. They won't overwhelm you, and that works out really, really well. Now for some red one-ofs. One Cease to Exist. Again, I mentioned that the Universe 7 matchup for this deck, the Universe 7 Invoker matchup, is the hardest matchup. So having the one-of answer to the SSB Vegeta Inspired Technique was really important. Then we had one Further Introduction Champa. This card just seems so much more important the more and more I play with it, because there are so many ways that your battle cards can die during battle. Man, remember the days when Shugesh Kid Goku was broken? Every single deck basically has a Shugesh Kid Goku. So having the ability to go in on your leader for a double strike to end the game is really important. I always want to play more than one of this card, but I always have trouble finding the room. Next up, guys, we've got the blue cards, 4 Sensu Beans. In this deck, it's just the card you need. Like in some decks, like Justin Rios' first place list, he only played 2 Sensu Bean, but in Cooler, it seems a lot more important because it helps you go for those aggressive pushes. In U7, you're not really going for aggro pushes, but in this deck, you can go for some pretty strong aggressive pushes. And again, that's why I like this deck. You can play in all phases of the game, aggro, control, mid-range, you can do it all. Next up, 3 Combo Attack Cooler. So this card allows you to bounce back any of your Frieza clans to play it for 1, and that's the #1 way you're gonna loop the Tyrannical Assault Cooler. So you can, use your Beer Super Combo, put Cooler in play, use this Cooler to bounce the Arrival Cooler back to your hand, and then in the same battle, you can Arrival that Cooler once again. That play was so relevant over the course of the weekend, whether it was for putting on aggression or whether it was for answering 20k battle cards. That's your main way to neg 20 something. Having this card in conjunction with the Tyrannical Assault Cooler, super important. Next up, for a cool one of, we had Frieza Undying Emperor. This was basically another answer to counterplays that wasn't Denial of Hope. This is actually an answer to counterplays that gave me a body. So using this card answered things like Topo and then gave me a 15k body. So I'm stopping my opponent's defense while also generating another 15k body. Really, really relevant for, again, that U7 matchup, which we wanted to really hedge against. Another card for the U7 matchup, Ultra Instinct Son Goku, the Unstoppable. I put this in there because that 6-drop Goku is a huge problem. Getting shot for 5 or 4 damage from Catastrophic Blow, you can't really do anything about it except for have UI Goku. If it wasn't for U7, I don't think I would even play this card, but you really, really need it for that matchup, so I included it. Then we have 1 Judge and 2 regular Whis Coercions. This was the negate of choice for my deck. I didn't really think you needed After Image because, again, you have other ways to neg the Boo battle cards. Again, you have the Gohan Avenger, you have the Cooler Arrival, and this card was way more important for the Gohan matchup. It just allowed you to negate multiple times per turn so that you wouldn't die. After Image would not really do much against the Gohan matchup, so that's why I didn't go with it. Real quick through the side deck, we got 2 Fu Shrouded. This is just a game ender. You absolutely need it against, again, U7. You need it against Piccolo, any form of Piccolo Surge, really, no matter what it is. Then we have 2 Mafuba. This is a kind of a coverall card, and going into a wide format, you're going to want cards that are good in a lot of different matchups, but the main meta matchup this was great against was the Boo matchup. So at any point, if they attack with the Boo chain, you Mafuba it, then they can no longer go up their Boo chain that turn because they probably already invested a lot of energy into that first one. Mafuba just kind of shuts it off. Also good against really random stuff like Green Yellow Successor. If you're going up against like someone playing the expert deck Gohan 8-drop that can swing twice, Mafuba, excellent for that. Then we had 3 Isekai Keeping Watch. This was for the Surge Goku matchup. I still expected it to be a really popular deck, and again, you are a pretty defensive deck. You don't always want to be taking a whole lot of damage, so when they would offensively use the Bardock Ape, I would bounce back to their hand. And then in the Gohan matchup, this is basically a 15k combo when you're trying to live, so it was really important. In those matchups, I would take out a lot of my dead 10k combos, like my Frieza 100% overdrives, and bring this in against Gohan in particular, so that I wouldn't just, get absolutely destroyed and have a 15k combo. Then we had 3 Dark Power Black Mass Saiyans. This was for the Cell deck because, again, I was aware of the Cell loop and I wanted to have a way to answer it, so this worked out really well. This was the only Self-Awaken in the main and side deck. Again, I do really wish I had Self-Awaken in the main deck. Going into TOP on Saturday, I probably would have tried to fit the Awakening Talent Pan in the main deck somewhere in Cooler. That would have been really good. Another Whis Coercion for the Gohan matchup mainly, also relevant against U7 because of the Victory Strike. You have to put in a lot of cards against Victory Strike. I mean, a U7 deck in general. You also have to put in the 3 Cease to Exist to help out with that, so you can answer the SSB Vegeta. You want to have an answer to Vegeta every single turn because they can just drop one turn after turn after turn, so you really do want to have answers to it. And the final card, guys, one more SS Vegeta Exploding Weakness, again for Surge Goku. Just having answers to their really wide boards I found to be really helpful. But anyway, guys, this is the deck I played at the Friday Regional. I ended up going XO1 with it. Pretty sure I would have topped if I kept playing, but I already had my invite and I wanted to help my friends set up for the Tournament of Power. I wish I played this at TOP, but unfortunately I did not. Guys, let me know in the comments below what you think about the deck. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.